Hi, first graders. It's Mrs. Carol, and I have a new book for us. This one's called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. Since we are talking about plants and growing things, and it's spring, and we have lots of rainy weather, I thought we could do another plant book. This is by Candace Fleming and G. Brian Crass. Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. Remember our 3 P's when we read a book. Think about the purpose. So our purpose is to think about plants and how they grow. And we make some predictions. Who do you think's doing all the muncha, muncha, munching? And then we do a little preview. So sometimes I do a little book preview where I look through the pictures and kind of see if I'm going to like the book. It has some big pictures. This is what I do at the library too before I check out a book. I kind of look at the pictures, I look at the text, I make sure I can read it, and it looks kind of like a fun book. So we just did a quick preview. So Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming, illustrated by G. Brian Crass. There's our dedication page and publication information if you want to know when they wrote the book. For years, Mr. McGreely dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. But he never once tried it until, sometimes I like that word until, something's going to change in the story. What do you think changed for him? So sometimes I make predictions before I read, and sometimes I even do it during reading. This spring, said Mr. McGreely, this spring, by golly, I'm going to plant a garden. So he hoed, and he sowed, and he watched his garden grow. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes. Yum, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGreely. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. Can you see who else might like them? Sometimes authors and illustrators give us a little hint. But one night when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. I like that other conjunction too, but that means something's going to change too. Tippy, 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 pat. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry. So he built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There, he declared, no bunny can get into my garden now. What do you think? Will they still get in? And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 pat. Spring hurtled, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his nibbled leaves and gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. So he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. Humph, he huffed. Those floppy ears will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. What do you think? Was that a good solution to his problem? And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 pat. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring hurdle, dash, 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 Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. So this book has kind of the same problem over and over again, and the characters trying to solve it in different ways. Will you have another way of solving? The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was really, really angry. So he made a deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall, behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. "Ha!" he snorted. "Those puff-tails can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now." What do you think? I think all these characters show a certain character trait. So sometimes they're similar. Do you know that character trait? Do you know what it means, or a word for when you never give up? There's a word called perseverance. The bunnies are persevering, not giving up on getting the vegetables, and Mr. McGreely is persevering at trying to stop them. We'll see who comes out ahead. And the sun went down, and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat, dive, paddle, splash, splash, splash. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring, hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chopped blossoms, his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was furious. So he hammered and blocked, sawed and stalked, drilled and filled, and trapped and locked. And he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench, outside the tall wooden wall, behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. "I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure," he exclaimed. "They can't get through it, they can't get under it, and they can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how, can get into my vegetable garden now." I still see them, though. How will they manage this one? Can you make some predictions? Let's see. And the sun went down, and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 stop. The 3 hungry bunnies looked and smelled and touched the huge, enormous thing before them, and tippy, 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 pat. The bunnies hopped away. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetable, he was happy. "I beat the bunnies," he whooped, and did a jiggly-wiggly victory dance. Then he climbed over, jumped across, squeezed between, and crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. "Ah," sighed Mr. McGreely. At last, smacking his lips, he picked and pulled up lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. Muncha, muncha, muncha. How did they solve their problem? Do you know how they got in? And look how the story ends. Can they all win? Sometimes sharing is the very best. And I like sharing stories with you. So that was our Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. Hope you liked it. We'll read another story another day. Bye, friends.